I got 30
Yeah,
seconds, but
unless, okay, no,
Okay,
they're,
I'm going to call it to order. I think the clocks are correct now.
okay.
Let's have a roll call.
Arnold. Here. Beckwith.
Here.
Farcapisi. Absent. Flores.
Here.
Kotsinis.
Here.
Hamilton.
Here.
Sutton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Warren Newport Public Library District provides the community with access to information, kindles the imagination of children and adults, and supports lifelong learning. Would anyone like to speak in public comment? Please. I'm going to set my timer.
Okay. Good evening, District Board of Trustees. My name is Maurice Cashin, and I come before you this evening to obtain further information regarding a scheduled program entitled On Being Fabulous with Jonathan Van Ness. This program will be offered May 17th at 7 p.m. If this proposed program is appropriately confined to a respectful discussion and modest presentation of hairstyling techniques and fashion trends, then I have no credible substantive concern regarding the general availability of this program. But if the proposed presentation involves a more visibly graphic and immodest promotion of Mr. Van Ness's life choices, then I respectfully request that this program be limited to a mature and discerning adult audience. I believe such to be already the case, since the notice for this program is on the adults page of the current Inside Angle. I ask that any program extolling his lifestyle be limited to adults due to my concern that a portrayal of Mr. Van Ness's checkered biography would be deleterious to children. Even a cursory review of his own reflections, writings, and interviews clearly indicate that Mr. Van Ness has engaged in illicit drug usage, male prostitution, and transvestitism. Mr. Van Ness is also a politically aggressive advocate of a gender-fluid ideology. If the proposed undefined program will indeed be one of disordered self-promotion, then Mr. Van Ness's past and current problematic actions, statements, and professed beliefs should persuade this board to direct the appropriate parties to confine this program to discerning adults, and also to restrict program access to impressionable youth. As I conclude my comments, I thank you for your service to the library and also to the wider community that relies upon your expertise and judgment. Thank you for your time spent thoughtfully considering my patient request for further information regarding On Being Fabulous with Jonathan Van Ness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I make 3 minutes?
You did. Okay. Where are we now? Sorry.
And we're in the practical. Unless we don't have any more written comments.
No, nothing written? Okay, we're on to the consent agenda. Is now when we
Yeah.
can have Andrea join?
yes, it's you want to make a motion to.
We need a motion.
Yeah, don't we?
I'll move that Andrea be added to the meeting virtually.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Excuse me, sorry. Her number, she's
This is Andrea.
Hey, Andrea.
Hello.
Hello?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, we had the beginnings, we had public comment, and now we're on to the consent agenda.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm ready.
all right, anyone want to remove anything from the consent? Okay, who would like to make the motion?
So moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, President's report, page 33. I gotta get there,
33?
33.
Yeah. I want to make a comment on 28 and a half hours spent as our president. You're a volunteer, right?
Yes, I'm a volunteer.
I just-
But I had to do the exec session binders, exec session binder, I had to do the
I know.
director evaluation binders, I had to do the, what's the other one in there?
I don't know, but I add up
Board
your hours every
self-evaluation.
month because it's a lot, so
Okay, well,
I
thank
just
you.
want everyone to appreciate you for that.
And also I had to do the president's binder, which has all of the extranet stuff in it, and that was
That took
a lot,
time,
so,
right.
that's why, sorry. But thank you for
All the
noticing.
time.
Any other questions about that? Reports from other people? Nobody? Okay, Ryan, you're up.
I wanted to mention a couple of things that are not in the report. So what I think we are going to do in terms of trying to bridge the gap with the ECF hotspots, the board will recall were projected to be over in the telecommunications line due to a couple of different factors. I think we can, without a major disruption of service, take out of commission about half of those ECF hotspots because they're not all being used. Now, all the regular hotspots are, but not all the ECF ones are. Yeah. So I think that's not going to completely close the gap, but that's a step in the right direction. So, so unless the board objects, we will go ahead and initiate that process.
Ryan, why do you think that they're not being used now?
It's because of the barrier, because with the ECF hotspots, you've got to fill out the application to do it. And people, if there's and usually there's one or two of the regular ones. I mean, there's still, I think 25 of them out right now,
Okay.
but they're getting used. So, but if people can choose the regular hotspots, they're gonna choose it because they don't want to
That's
fill out.
easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we knew that going into the grant, that was the downside to this, was that we
Okay.
would have to
Okay.
ask people to give us the information,
Just didn't
so.
want to think it was.
So what are the terms of the restrictions in the grant? Are those terms indefinite?
No, as of the end of I think it's the end of June, when is when we can use the equipment, we'll still have to pay for the service, but yeah, so that'll be our equipment to use without any restrictions.
Okay.
So we're putting how many, or we're disabling how many?
I think 25 of them and half of them.
So we'll just put them in storage till June?
Yeah, yeah, so. So it's, it's a step in the right direction. It doesn't completely close the budget gap, but it, will help. Joe and I, we went to Representative Joyce Mason's legislative breakfast events. That was, I think, Monday of last week, and that went well, and it was a good conversation with Representative Mason. And then Senator Edley Allen, her legislative breakfast event has been rescheduled to Thursday, April 13th. Those of you that were scheduled to go, I reached out to you and told you that she had to postpone the event. And I think it was, I don't know the reasons, but she was very apologetic. So that will be at the Zion Benton Public Library Thursday, April 13th at 8 a.m. So if there are any trustees that would like to attend, please let me know.
And I can't go this time, so.
Yeah, so.
All right.
Who was gonna go?
Celeste and I think, right?
Yeah, I can check my calendar.
What's
at
the
8 a.m.?
It's
Thursday?
a Thursday.
Thursday the 13th, April 13th at 8 a.m. at the Zion Benton Public Library,
That
which
shouldn't
is
be an issue.
probably like a 25-minute drive from here.
Yeah, I can still go.
Okay, I'll look.
What time did you say?
Thursday, April 13th at 8 a.m.
Otherwise, any questions about the executive report?
Okay. The self-evaluation, you wanna talk about this, Randy?
Sure. So the results are in the packet. There really wasn't, I thought, anything startling in them. the first page, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, pulls each of the sections with the questions and then the average for each question and the average for each section. The second page is just the sections in rank order. So they all fall within the three area, 4 being always in the responses, and never was a 1, I think. And so the 2 highest, which were very close, were financial management and board and trustee development. The only one that was a little on the low side was the completion of most recent goals, and there are extenuating circumstances around that, so, you know, I don't know that there's anything there that really needs to be discussed unless anyone has any questions. And then I also included all of the comments, and they read down, just to avoid any confusion rather than a cross. But, you know, by and large, it looks as if the board feels that we're working well and, you know, are meeting the needs of the library district. Any questions?
So, I'll put this on for April committee of the whole, and we'll have a discussion about then deciding goals then, or do you want to do it tonight?
Oh, I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
What do people think?
Sounds like April.
Yeah, it would work better if Andrea were in person.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, it would give everyone more time to kind of look at these. One thing I'd like to throw out as an idea, and I think I may have said it in the past though, is that I think we should look to establish 2 goals instead of 3, because 3 seems like it's kind of a lot, and I think we need to evaluate whether or not we want to continue picking goals that fall to one person, because we have to get that person's buy-in if we're going to make something a board goal. So that's been kind of an issue, I think.
And there were comments about
Yes.
to that point.
Yeah. And so particularly before the April committee of the whole, if you could kind of go through this and pick out the things that sort of stand out for you for things that we might want to discuss, and then ponder what some of the goals are that are suggested. I have another one that I want to suggest that I didn't think of putting on this form, but I thought of it later. So I'll bring that up at the April meeting, so.
So just the goal suggestions are the last column on page 50.
Right.
Thank you for doing all this.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. All right, anything else on this? Okay, strat plan update.
So last week we had 2 events. We had we met with our community engagement task force and did a community cafe via Zoom, and then Thursday night we did a community cafe event with our community. We had 12 people attend. And there were some, I mean, the board will look at this more in detail, but I can share a couple of major takeaways. One thing that both groups mentioned was the website. There was feeling that the website was difficult to navigate. It was hard to find information. That came from both the Community Engagement Task Force and the Community Cafe. So I think that's something that we'll certainly want to work on. And with the Community Cafe group, it was the Community Engagement Task Force. They talked about training for staff, making sure that staff, there was one member that felt that sometimes when they come to the library, they didn't feel welcomed. So I think one of the things that came up in that meeting was to make sure we have as welcoming an environment as possible. The Community Cafe, there were a lot of comments. I think there were comments about more adult programs came up, not enough youth programs, and I don't know how we tackle that. More hours, Sundays throughout the year. And I mentioned to the group that these are great things to to want, but there is a financial cost, and
Right.
we're limited. So, I mean, if we could somehow manage to work Sunday hours throughout the year in the budget, that would be wonderful. And maybe it's something that we should try to aspire to, but that's a challenge, because that's not inexpensive. So, so those are the highlights. I can share the notes with the board, especially as we get closer to April and then our meeting to develop the plan. But I think they were good events. Celeste Day was at both of them, and so I don't know if you want to add anything, any takeaways from.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were both very different, because the first one was more like with different organizations that Maria or the library partners with, so I think their needs and what they're looking at is very different from people that just come to the library every day and are looking for programming. And something that I really took away from the second one was registration for events.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
so
yeah.
I think there's something there with the website of alerting people. I think, you know, things in the past would get filled up too quickly, but now, you know, we have one, you know, a patron that's juggling, you know, 2 different ages and trying to make sure that they have on their calendar to register, right? And so just trying to think of easier ways for our website or for some kind of reminder to go out. So I don't know how easy that is with the tech or IT people, right? But just thinking through other ways that we can make sure patrons are reminded that they need to register for events, or looking at how we offer more next year if there is a wait list, because I know that a lot of times, especially for like the computer classes, it's limited how many people, because obviously we want the instructors to be able to pay attention to those individuals and not be overwhelmed, but then it really limits how many people can join.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening. And it makes sense, because people talked about getting the inside angle, and then they had that event, but the registration wasn't open, so they put it on their calendars. And for busy parents, it's hard for people to remember to, you know, go in and register on that date, just because I think that, and I think I can speak to this, probably a couple board members can speak to this, you know, with you know, busy jobs and extracurricular activities and just everything else, you know, our families are pretty busy, and it's hard to juggle schedules, So that was really interesting to get that feedback.
Is there a reason it was printed but not open to register?
Oh, the timing when the registration opens up. We've done it different ways. There was one point, not really so long ago, probably pre-COVID, where we had like one date where people would go in and register, and that was just a little overwhelming for staff. So we spread it out based on the timing of the event, which seems to
So
work
it's like
better.
you get a week or 2 weeks or something?
To sign up, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but yeah, but it's something we should certainly look into, and maybe even engage the community further and see what works best for the community, because I think that's definitely an open-ended question after hearing that. So
It'd be interesting to see how we could use some of our existing technology. Constant Contact, I think you have already in place. Whether that could be set up in such a way that it would send reminders to specific audiences.
Yeah, I had suggested, like, if people kind of decided what they wanted to get alerts on, like if they decide, you know, they want adults or like children, so then they would be alerted of that they're not getting spammed with every event we have, right? But they self-select what they want to hear more about us.
It's like you say you're interested, like on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then it reminds you to sign up.
Yeah, but definitely look at existing tools, and there are a few tools that we're looking at. I'm not sure that they may be cost prohibitive in the next budget year that we haven't discussed yet with the board, that might allow us to be more robust with that kind of patron engagement. But I don't know how feasible that is, because some of those products are pretty expensive. But
Anything else on this? Okay.
What's the goal on surveys? Like, how many are you guys aiming to get, or is there?
is there a goal? You know, I think right now, I think we're comfortable with the number of English surveys, but you know, with our growing Spanish-speaking community, last I checked, it was we need to get more, and I know the staff are working hard on that, but I think that's the big goal right now, is focusing on Spanish-speaking engagement. But no, we didn't. So let's answer, because we didn't set out with a certain goal. We want to get X number of surveys.
Okay, systems.
Yeah, so the building systems project is still going according to plan. You know, we've met with them. They finished their final site review. One of the things they warned us about is that they're worried that the what we budgeted versus what the cost of this project will be, the cost will exceed that for a number of factors. So we'll see. The way we're doing the bid is that it's going to be kind of broken up into chunks. So let's say it did come back and it was cost prohibitive to do this project all at once, we would have some flexibility, but we won't know that until the bidding process is complete. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope that that is not the case. So Miguel has some yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
So we're talking about page 51, the budget for the quiet reading room?
Not yet. I was talking about the Wold project with the rooftop units.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a little harder to follow when I'm remote. Go ahead.
Sure. No, that's all. So I was just saying that they're a little concerned that when we go out to bid that we're not going to be able to stick within the budget as we have this project budgeted. So we'll see. I mean, it remains to be seen. Hopefully that's not the case, but.
I heard that part. I just had it applied to the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's the important.
Andrea, that was
takeaway.
my fault, because when I said building systems update, I practically whispered it to Ryan, so I'm sure you didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank
I'll try
you.
to fix that.
I mean, are there any questions about that, about this process?
What was the dollar amount we budgeted?
I think it's about $900,000. When it's all said and done, with all the pieces of the project, including the rooftop units, the garage work that needs to be done in the boiler.
Yep.
So there is an option if we needed to, and this is something that Kevin and I discussed to rebuild the boiler. We had the boiler inspection recently, and the inspector said that if we wanted to save some money, we could go that route and probably save quite a bit of money. So that, I think, depending on how this bid comes back, is something we might want to explore. But we'll see. But I don't think we want to take it off the table,
So we know.
all things considered.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, quiet reading room, Andrea.
Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was in your packet on page 51, the bids, and I think talking to Tiffany Nash, this is essentially for furniture, it's kind of a commodity, so I don't think there's any reason for us to go with any other vendor other than Forward Space to save the most money. One thing about the project is that notice the total is $67,653.03. What we have budgeted with the grant that we got into the village and what money we raised for it is $63,292.89. That brings us short.
62,000.
What's that?
62,000.
63,000 and change. So, long story short, we're short about a little under $4,400. So we have the board has two options here. We could just cut some furniture from the project, and Tiffany said she certainly could do that. Another option we have that's a new option is, and I'm not suggesting this is the way to go. There was a gentleman that passed away, and we've talked to staff. We don't know this gentleman. No one knows who he is. His name was Harold Burt, and he left $5,000 to the library. It's unrestricted. So suddenly we have this $5,000 donation that came in that we could, in theory, allocate towards this project. Not saying that's the best use of the money, but it's certainly an option if we wanted to complete the quiet reading room complete as the board saw it. So I'm just throwing that out there. But that's obviously the board's decision. There's obviously other ways we could use those funds as well. So
Ryan, I'm not following the difference between base and alternates.
The extra furniture that.
yeah, the alternates are we can't afford in essence.
It was additional.
Oh, like that.
The additional stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Those are like upgrades or something more
Yeah,
expensive.
there were a few other things we wanted to
Like an
potentially do in this
chair.
project.
Yeah, it was something.
I think a lot of it
we
was
looked
the
at it.
shelving. There was I don't think art was an alternate, but I think it was mostly the shelving. So we're fine.
It was interesting that they had the low bid for the base, but then their alternative that was way higher than the rest. Not way, but
And I'm not
yeah.
I'm not sure why that is,
Yeah, it's
but
interesting. That's all.
yeah. So
They wanted our
I have
business.
a suggestion.
sure, Andrea.
So one of the things that we weren't able to afford with the extra furniture was the puzzle table, the new puzzle table. Would it be possible, and I believe that puzzle table was less than 5,000. But if we use the 5,000 for the quiet reading room, could we put a little plaque, a little notation on the puzzle tables, thankful to our dear patron who passed, for the donation or something like that?
Absolutely, sure.
Because that way we honor him, and we honor their donation, and I just think it's a nice thing.
Yeah, very good idea.
And people look at that puzzle table every day.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I don't know what
And we can let the family know, too.
Yeah.
Anything else on this?
We need a motion on this, don't we?
Yeah, so the motion to award the bid, and if you wanted to add to the motion to allocate that donation to this project, the board could do that, but that's your call, obviously. So I don't know if there needs to be more discussion, or?
What is everyone thinking?
Well, is the only criteria cost? Do we care about local vendors? Do we care about other projects they've done? The costs are all so close, I don't think that they're materially different.
Right.
No, I don't either.
Tiffany has worked with Forward Space, so she was pleased that they won the bid. I think they're easy to work with. I don't think that there's compelling, to my knowledge, I don't recall any of these being like in the district, so, yeah.
Good.
All right, who would like to make the motion?
I move that we accept the Forward Space bid for completing the project and also allocate the $5,000 donation we received to this project for completion.
I second it.
All right, let's have a roll call for this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any
Arno?
other things you want to say about it before we do the roll call? Okay, go ahead.
Farcapisi,
Aye.
Arnold,
I
Hamilton,
Aye.
Flores,
Aye.
Cozzini,
Aye.
Sutton, Beckwith.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Okay. Review. What is that?
IT capital projects. That's at your places. Andrew, I emailed this to you right before the meeting, so hopefully you have it.
Yeah, I did get it.
I apologize, I didn't send it to you sooner.
Don't worry.
And the numbers do reflect what's in the 10-year capital plan, but obviously this sheet has the details. And Rudy's here with us tonight. Hopefully, I know she's listening to the audio. Maybe she could talk if you have any questions. But I can try to handle it myself. And I'm very thankful to her because it's not in the packet, and it's certainly something we can look at a future board meeting, but we do have a draft of the 10-year technology plan, which is something we haven't had, and it's excellent. And with all due respect to OSGU, who provided a template, the IT vendor we work with, she did the lion's share of the work, and it's quite impressive. So if you look at that 10-year capital plan, not to jump ahead, I feel like we have a much better grasp of what our IT needs are. Obviously, looking beyond, I think 5 years in IT is kind of science fiction in a sense. With in this day of AI rapidly advancing and all the technological advances. However, it's better than what we had before, because before we had maybe 2 or 3 years plotted out, and then it was kind of wild guesses, and now I feel like we have pretty good idea of what our needs are. There are a lot of IT projects, and one thing that I want to point out too is that under Smitty's leadership, we really discovered that we were behind a lot of areas. So I think that's one of the reasons we've spent so much on IT the past couple of years, is because we were behind in certain areas. I think we needed to because of COVID. If you think about it, during COVID, we bought a lot of laptops for staff, for example. So I know there are a lot of expenses in here, and we can go through them. So I think the first thing to point out, the first line, that technology hardware refresh plan. So I think we've been able to successfully space out the hardware replacement you're thinking of staff PCs. So in here we have the patron laptops estimate, and then we also it's not grouped together, but there's a line on the second page, the $5,000 monitors and wireless keyboards for staff with laptops. I think one of the things that I will say Smriti realized is that we got all these laptops. I've gotten one here during the pandemic because staff had to work remotely, and we still have a couple years of life on these laptops. Well, I've got a laptop and I've got a desktop PC. I really don't need both, especially now that we have Teams. Before, you make the argument that you needed to have both because you'd have to, VPN, or it was just too tricky. But now with this laptop, I can pretty much do everything that I can do on my desktop. So, one of our proposals here is to budget that $5,000 so we can get good monitors, because right now we have the all-in-ones, and then the peripherals, the mouse and the keyboard, and that would help us spread out the cost, and then we can redeploy some of those machines or use them as backups. So that's kind of the budget items in this as the start of the, that staff computer replacement. So, I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, or if that sounds good as a start to the replacing our hardware for staff and patrons.
So we'll do this over time, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, try to spread it out over
Right.
time. I know George brought up the idea of looking into leasing, and we did look into the leasing, but it wasn't going to be as advantageous for us, so, and Smriti can probably talk more to that than I can, if you have any questions about it.
So we basically just did a comparison. We asked for two people to give the cost comparison for the same thing. And because we have direct vendor connection with CDWG as a reseller, that is coming out to be cheaper than leasing.
Fair enough. Always good to run the numbers.
Yes.
That was good. It was a good idea. Let's see I don't know if we want to go through these one by one. I think some of them are self-explanatory. What's in green, I think, is recommended for now, and then I think when we look at the complete budget at the April Committee of the Whole, that's, I think, where we start to revisit some of these capital projects and either push some of them down the road or take them off the table entirely. The material sorter, once again, we're meeting with vendors in early April. I was hoping to have a better number, but I think what's tricky with the material sorter project is that it's not like you're buying, you need a minivan, and pretty much any model will do. Really, what we need to do is assess how our workflow is going to change with CCS and how many bins we actually need, and I think the vendors we're going to meet with are going to help us sort that out along with CCS. I mean, it's going to be probably $150,000 though. So no matter what we end up with, if we do indeed replace the sorter, we have it highlighted in green. This is one of those things I don't have on the IT list. How often we've talked about this, but members of the board that have been on the board for a while, this is something we've been talking about for maybe like 2 or 3 years. We have that tank of a sorter that's still running, but it's just
It is a tank.
Can we make it viewable to the public, because my kids love it?
It's-
And they always peek
It is
in
really
there,
cool.
and
It
they
is
look,
really
and they
cool.
watch, and they stare at
I
it.
think it used to
It's
At
be.
one
very
point it
cool.
was,
It
Yeah.
used to be like 10
just
years
like a
before
window.
they did the renewal. Everybody loved it. The
The
kids
li-
were
the-
like just
Watching it
Even
go.
another people, not just when they were
It's
doing
fascinating.
themselves. It
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
they
Then
were
it's
like
worth it.
Yeah,
And it's like
Put her
art
in it.
installation and.
I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, if we are
It's
gonna
a great
replace
idea.
it, I don't know what that would add to the cost of the project, but we can investigate.
But we consider a pay-per-view, like put in a quarter and get to see it.
Sure.
Leave it to the treasurer.
By the time it dies, we might have enough in that pay-per-view to buy a new.
Like a quarter,
Yeah,
Quarter
Quarter
that goes up.
the curtain
pull the-
parts and.
the curtain parts. Oh my goodness. That's good.
I don't know if this would go under the dark web monitoring, but I know that I signed up for an event at a university and they got an email that all their information, that my information had been compromised. And they offered like 2 years of, I forgot what, like that will be monitoring my email and all my information. Cause I had to put all my, I mean, thankfully I didn't end up, it was a free event. They're like, you should make a donation. I was like, I'm gonna skip the donation this time. So they didn't have my credit card information.
Yeah.
But that was something that was kind of alarming because I'm like, this is a established university.
Yeah.
I was not thinking twice of signing up for a free event.
Happens a
So
lot.
I don't know if yeah, okay, maybe it happens more than I realized. George could tell us more,
Yeah,
but
wow.
that was concerning to me, and it, made me think of like, oh, where else am I putting my info?
Yeah, where we ask patrons to pay, fortunately, we don't, it's basically when there's, fines or lost books or something. I don't know, it's something to look into.
Yeah,
'cause I don't know what
ended
their,
up not
what the
putting in a
vendor's
credit card.
policy is.
Yeah, because it was
so
just a free event, so I was like, maybe I'll make a donation another time, but
Yeah.
it was just like all my, my email, my phone number, and then, they like set me up for like 2 years for it to be monitored or whatever, which made me feel a lot better, but I was like, oh.
This service would only affect staff though, not patrons.
the dark web monitoring, and that does come with I guess both the password manager options we're looking at, and that's in yellow as a possible project. I think the other thing that we're very much aware of is not introducing too much too soon with staff. So so that may be something we would decide. Hey, we want to budget it, but down the road, that's why it's in yellow.
Something I don't see on here.
Yeah.
Oh, it is on here. 2-factor authentication.
Yeah, right above that.
And I think George, I think it's probably something we should do sooner rather than later. I do think the concern we have from staffing point of view is getting staff to embrace it. But it's probably one of those things that it's just I'm sorry you got to do it because it's so important.
We really need to look at it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So
especially with everything that we've moved on to Office 365, the way we're doing it now is not ideal.
Yeah. Well, we are we're lined up to do it. If you want it to be green, I don't think we have any objections. We can but I want to do it. Srini wants to do it, but our concern is that we just have staff that are slow technology adopters. Not that that's a reason not to do it, but just to be transparent about it. That's our concern.
It takes all of us time to get used to stuff, but you end up doing it anyway, even if you don't like it.
Yeah. But I don't.
I'm surprised you're looking at Duo and YubiKey though instead of the service Microsoft offers for free.
Yes, Microsoft Authenticator is free, but then staff will have to install the app on the phone.
Yes.
So that will be personal phone for library use.
Yeah. Personal phone for library use. Is that what you said?
Well, not quite. I say that.
Just
Well,
to prove
I
that you're
use it
you.
now for my Microsoft login to the library. I have Authenticator on my phone. It's fairly transparent.
I think one of our not concerns, but if we are to require staff to, and there's some mixed information out there, and I need to look into it more because it may pay for itself, but then I think if we're asking staff to use, I've heard you ask staff to use their devices, then they're entitled to some reimbursement for that device, and then that might add up. So
their personal.
Well, you're not necessarily requiring them to use their own data service, especially if they're in the library when they're doing it.
But if they want to check things
the question
up
is, would it be a way to cut costs if we made it an option?
Yeah.
So if we gave people the choice of either having a FIDO device or using their phone.
Yeah. That's a good point.
How many would actually choose the YubiKey versus having the phone they already have in their pocket?
Good thought, George. We'll look into it. Okay, great thought. Let's see, what else to talk about here with IT? A couple of things we haven't mentioned. I want to mention the boardroom technology. We have this in green as something we would like to do, because I know that is the boardroom, does the technology we have in here, does it work okay? It does. I think when we got looking into this, though, if we were to invest in something like the Meeting Owl technology, I think it would better help us record the meetings. If someone is I think with that tool, and I don't know a lot about it, if someone is participating remotely like Andrea is, it's easier to bring them into the meeting, I think.
There's a host of technologies out there. I don't know about Owl specifically, but
okay.
It's neat.
I know, this is Andrea. I know about the Owl. We used it at my previous firm, and we just bought one here at my recommendation. Instead of viewing the whole room, it turns to the person who's speaking and puts them on the screen, and the one we just bought for our firm will see through someone to a whiteboard.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, invisibility.
We don't know how it does it, but
Nor do we want to.
And I don't have at my fingertips what we spent on it, but it will eventually come across my desk, and I can let you guys know how much it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Logitech.
Knowing my
makes
guys,
one, but
it
there's a
was
bunch
the
of
top
these
of the
out there.
line. They like to spend money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not that this is insignificant. It's $4,500 what we're projecting here, but I think it would over time be an enhancement, help with the board meetings. One of the things about this room too, while we've got the smart TVs, is that yes, you can connect your laptop to display on these TVs. Sort of. It would be advantageous to be able to someone just to pull up any kind of device they have, whether it's an iPad or laptop, and then just cast to the screens. So I think that's worthy investment. And it wouldn't just benefit the board. We have a number of staff meetings in here. We have meetings with vendors. We have ventured in the idea of opening this up to the public. So I think there's some advantages to.
Yeah, and I noticed you've got in here an option of either 2 same size screens or 1 bigger one.
With a mounting.
Yes.
I think what we have for the board is currently fine, but if it helps staff, then I'm for it.
It's maybe one of those things, Andrea. I'm thinking that we kind of have in the budget, and we'll see where we're at. At the end of the day when we look at everything, and then if we need to make cuts, maybe that's one of those things we cut or scale back. Maybe you could go with the smart TV, but not the meeting hour, or vice versa. I mean, that's kind of my thinking anyway.
These things were put in here in what, 2011?
Before my time here, and I got here in 2014, so it could be.
So
10, 12 years,
yeah, they're up there.
Yeah, they're definitely up there.
I know at some point the backlight lamps on those will fail, and there's no way to repair or replace those. You just have to scrap the thing when that happens.
Then the other thing that there are a couple other smaller items which we certainly can talk about. Like department capital items, we have a better picture of this once we have the full budget and there are capital items in the department budgets. So we'll talk about that more in April. The switches, we discovered, or I should say Smriti discovered with OST's help, that we have these, we're doing the two switch replacements. We have some other ones which were not on our radar. And we're still getting details on the timeline when we need to replace these. So stay tuned for that. So this wasn't even on our radar last month, and now it is. So there was value in doing we knew there was value in the technology plan for other reasons, but one thing that we got out of it was the.
Where are the other switches?
There's one in adult internet row, right?
There are 2 in adult and internet row, 1 under each row. One is in the meeting room. One is called the door switch, but actually it's in the server room for the Isona's door control. So there are total 6 switches, out of which 2 big ones we have replaced.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions about IT projects? A few of them we didn't mention, but I think they're self-explanatory, but if not, we can certainly discuss them.
If we're considering replacing the ones in the adult services area, just a question.
Not this year.
Not this year, okay. 'Cause I'm just wondering what the specs would be of the new ones, because that's one way that we've got a potential bottleneck in traffic over there.
So my problem is we don't know how adult internet area is going to look 1 year, 2 years, 3
Yeah.
years, or 4 years down the line. Whether we are going to reduce the number of workstation, go more laptop, change the seating.
It may not be necessary because we may just retire them.
Yes.
And go to straight
So
wireless.
we'll keep on discussing. Looks like this is going to be an annual discussion, but the problem is this is very closely tied to the service, that is the departments, as well as facilities. Any kind of change is not just an IT change. The seating needs to be ordered, then the process has to change. And whatever new thing we do, assuming we go all laptop and no workstation, then where do we house those laptops for staff, patrons to collect or check out? So if not this, then some other expense will come up with whatever decision we make.
Good to be aware of it.
Other questions, or should we move on to 10-year capital?
Ready to move on? Okay, yeah.
So I used to do this on my own, and then Doug would look it over. And this year, getting back to a goal from last year, I completely delegated this to Doug, which was one of the best things I ever did.
Good for you.
And I think he's made improvements to it, honestly. And it's better if for another reason than we've got the IT the technology plan reflected the 10 years the projects that we anticipate. So if I don't know if we want to bounce ahead to. Well, first of all, I want to point out something on page, the facilities page, year 8, FY 23-24. Those years need to be updated, by the way, to reflect the current CNA. So that's why it's draft 1. This is inflated because if you go down to interior public spaces, interior staff and support spaces, those numbers reflect a complete change to that adult services area, which I think we've all agreed that we want to do the space study before we embark on that project. So I think the total numbers are correct, but you can shift those into the future. That's not going to be in this budget year. So so that does take down our facilities capital projects, thank goodness, because otherwise we're spending a lot of money. We already are, even without those things, and theoretically.
Wishful thinking, can we shift it out to 2029?
I mean, maybe. We'll see what that space planning study says, right? And then the bookmobile is reflected under site system surface. We're using the same terminology that's in the capital needs assessment. So if you're wondering where's the bookmobile, that's where it is. It's surface. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where it lives.
Surface, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, at the top row?
That's that very top line,
bookmobile.
site system surface, that 352,500. Part of that is something else, but obviously 300,000 is the bookmobile.
Right.
Was there more conversation about the question Andrea posed about getting more smaller
Yeah.
vans than a big one?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think that we might want to consider, and obviously, the budget discussion is ongoing, is to maybe budget the $300,000. And we wouldn't even have to do this because we could pass the budget without the bookmobile being in there, and then the board could go and allocate it later. But I think it would make sense to allocate the money to launch the summer schedule and the fall schedule, and really let it's a reinvented mobile services department really see what our needs are, and then at the end of the calendar year, have this discussion again. And I think we'll have a much better idea of what our needs are, because I think one of the problems we're having is that we know we're under a time crunch, that we need to replace the bookmobile, but at the same time,
We don't know what.
we have incomplete data and changes. So that's my thinking. And the board may disagree and want to make a decision, and that's fine too, but that's kind of my thought process.
Do we
right now.
want to talk about the bookmobile possibilities more in our next committee of the whole?
Yep, if you want.
Or is that in the strategy?
Strat plan.
That's 4-hour session. I don't know.
I like the idea of getting more information before we make a move one way or the other, but having the money there in case that's what we do decide to do.
Yeah, and I know that figure could vary widely depending on what,
Sure.
if it's another, Ford Transit versus,
Personalized colors.
Mercedes Sprinter van or the what was the F4, whatever that other thing was. So, but we talked about the technology. That we also have in here CCS. We've traditionally put the ILS system into the capital plan. It's not necessarily a capital expenditure, but it's a huge IT expense, so we put it in here. So we talked about those projects. And then if you go to that page 55, the big picture, assumptions that we're making. Once again, this is the first draft. What Doug did in terms of projected budget increases year over year is 2%, and I said to him, I think we might want to, revise this upward. But at the same time, with your guess is as good as mine in terms of what's going to happen with the economy and inflation, because we've got some, Congress that may not increase the debt ceiling, that could completely, lead to a global recession or anything else, right? I think there's mixed indicators out there, so I don't think we can. The danger of doing these things is how much can you project the future and budget. But right now it's 2%. We can certainly increase that, change that, upward or downward.
Ryan, do we consider district growth?
Not really, not in here. Because let's say that Old Mill Creek, right there on the map, that big circle right there in the northwest corner, the family that owns it, they decide to sell it. They're gonna sell it.
Hello.
Andrea, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. They're going to sell it to developers, and then all of a sudden it gets developed, and our EAV goes up, and that's not reflected in here because it's impossible to project that. So no, we don't necessarily increase like tremendous growth in the community with this. No.
Well, community growth has been roughly flat for the last 12 years, which is why there's not been much point.
Right. But obviously, if there's some breaking news that it's sold to a big developer, over time it's going to get developed, then obviously we can play with this. That's why even though it's a 10-year plan, we look at it every year, and it changes a lot every year. You might look at this first line and think, why is the percentage of yearly expenditure available 105%? That's because of money that we budgeted for the Wold Engineering project this fiscal year that's going to happen next fiscal year. So it doesn't mean that our funds are over budget. We have our special reserve fund, which we have designated reasons for that money being there. So there's no, we're not taking advantage of the taxpayers or anything. What we tax and put in the budget is needed for library expenditures and capital needs. So if you look at that bottom line, which is what I pay a lot of attention to, that percentage of yearly expenditure available. I want that to be between 50 and 100%, preferably more like 75 to 100% range. And this is trending pretty well, all things considered. And once again, there could be something that could throw it off. Let's say this project comes in well over budget, and it's going to be more expensive, the Wold project or anything else. But I think overall we're still looking pretty good until we get to FY 29-30. And I feel like this capital plan is probably more complete than previous capital plans because of the technology piece being so solid. But once again, with technology, 3 years down the road, your guess is as good as mine if some development comes up that we need to invest in. So any questions about this?
So in fiscal year 27-28, if we look at facilities, we're saying 2,000.
Because right now, if you go back to page 1, 27-28, you look, there's only about $1,900 for some exterior work.
It seems like our base though should be well above. Like just year over year, we're probably spending more than 2,000 on.
Oh, absolutely. And this is based on the capital needs assessment, and it will certainly, as we've seen, it will shift.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be things that we won't fund this year that we, fund future
But we're
years.
always buying big, well not big, but like medium things.
We're really not, actually. You've seen this the last few years, but there was a space back when I started on the board where we weren't paying a lot every year because we had just renovated the library.
Yeah.
As we repair all of this stuff or replace all of this stuff, it lasts for decades. We're just at the stage where a lot of it's all breaking down at once.
Kind of like owning a house for 30 years and you need everything.
Well, and the things get on different cycles though too. They're not all 20-year
all
cycles
together,
or
but-
10-year anymore.
Right.
But it varies.
Yeah. What's our last 2-year run rate on facilities
Oh, in terms of
year over year?
what we've spent, and I don't have it, but I can get it for you.
It'd just be interesting, right? So then to look forward at some of those years, like, have we ever only spent 2,000?
I don't think we've ever only spent 2,000.
Probably
I'm
never.
just picking on that
Probably,
one.
probably
Yeah.
never.
Yeah,
But I can think of years where we've spent under 50,000.
but 2,000.
2,000 seems a little light, but we'll see as we get closer. Because some of these numbers that are closer might get further, some of the numbers that are further out might end up closer.
Coming,
And I think another thing that is missing, Catherine, now that you pointed out, is the department capital projects. Because we usually end up spending $15,000 to $20,000 on, and you know, you think department capital projects, think like graphics needs a printer or things like that end up in the budget that aren't necessarily, we haven't projected out that far into the future. So that needs to be added to this. So the next version of this, that will bump up that number. So.
And we only planned those out for the coming year, not years ahead of time, correct?
Correct. I mean, that's the way we've done it historically.
All right, anything else on this one? Okay, where are we? Your review, page 56.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, we have a statement of economic interest.
Oh, yes, we got our emails.
Afterward.
D as well?
We're on D.
I think it's, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, maybe I had it the other way.
Yeah, so in keeping with you know, what we discussed during the executive director evaluation process, the idea was to check in each quarter on the progress of the goals, and so this is all in the report. It's a summary, and I'm happy to go into detail. You know, in terms of the new strategic planning process, we talked about that this evening. I feel like we're making more progress than I thought with salary compensation structure and job descriptions, because what we've done with the movement towards, instead of doing annual evaluations for staff at the end of the year, we're doing them month by month on anniversary date. So as we're doing the annual evaluations, we are doing the job description reviews at the same time, which seems to be a pretty good process. So I think we have about 15 complete to date. And that will pick up as we get into the summer, because it seems like the summer and fall we hired more staff. So, and as we have new ads that we put out, new employment opportunities that we advertise, we review the job descriptions at that point as well. You know, we're working hard, obviously, on, you know, was outreach services, net mobile services, and the work smarter, not harder with our new committee structure. The retention recruitment committee meets in April, so that meeting is on the calendar, and that's going to be our number one priority. And one of the things that, not that I'm concerned, but a challenge we want to be aware of going into the process is I've had conversations with venture staff members, including people like Vicki Schoenrock, who recently retired, who was here for a long time, and Vicki in particular was telling me about different efforts for staff recognition. There was something called the FISH program, I think, that Steve Barrow brought to the library. I know Gina, I mean, no, I'm putting you on the spot. So we've had these attempts to implement these programs, and they just kind of fizzled out quickly. So, and I think what we've identified as the key is to make sure it's something that staff is excited about, what they want to see in a staff recognition program, and then get the managers to buy into it, because if the managers don't buy into it, then it's just not going to work. So I'm really excited about that. So I feel good, even though we haven't made, you know, really, other than sitting in a meeting, tremendous amount of progress. You know, that will be our number one priority, and I think that's going to be a good approach to work across departments with various members of different departments, and to come up with a staff recognition program that's going to be effective and sustainable over time.
The people on the committee from staff, are they the ones who always step up and want to be involved in things? Or is it like a mix of?
Yeah, when we put these committees together, you know, Rebecca and I did the initial, like, we think these people will be good, and then we talked to the managers and these individuals, and it's mostly full-time staff, but in some instances are part-time staff. So, for example, Rachel Murray is our representative from Adult Services, and she's a part-time staff member, but she's been here for a long time. So I think it's a pretty good mix. And what's nice about it, too, is you have people that have been in different departments. Nancy Lukiyosuji is on the committee from Tech Services. She used to work in Adult Services. So I think it's a pretty representation. So, and I wouldn't say that those individuals are necessarily the ones that always step up to do things. So,
because there's something to be said for, like, involving the phrase that comes to my mind is stick in the mud, but that's but if you get like those people and you can get them to change, right, and that they're like see the value, then they're your biggest change agent at the end of it.
Right.
It's kind of just why I was asking.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's one of those things that we should consider maybe future meetings, inviting some other people in that fit that criteria. Because I think you're right. If you, looking at the group, it's not necessarily all, like I think that Nancy is incredibly talented, and anything that she works on is incredible. But she's not necessarily one that steps up and I mean, she if you ask her to, she will. But she's not necessarily one that's always volunteering, for example. But that's a good point.
Okay, any other feedback on this one? Okay, now statement of economic interest.
This is just a reminder to complete your statement of economic interest.
Do it. No, we just did.
And if you need some guidance, I think last year I shared with the board, the Illinois Municipal League did a nice overview of how to complete this. And there's one question that's a little bit confusing at the end. It's if you have to have it certified. You do not have to have it certified as trustees of a library district. That's my understanding. That's state officials, I think, that have to do it. Might be even state elected officials. So when you're filling it out, if you get to the end and you think, check this box. If you don't have to certify it, you can check that box. So
I'll say too that I asked my financial advisor for some advice on how to do it, and he is also on a public board. So if you're financial advisor, it's a good source to ask. Yeah. So if you
It's
get
due
stuck.
May 15th or something. Does anybody remember?
I think it's May 2nd.
May
Yes.
2nd, sorry.
We'll send out reminders.
Done.
Has anyone done it?
Yeah,
Me.
Andrea.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to.
Last year. I have my answers
Well, we
from
did it-
last year, so I figured.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
did.
just,
I
that's what I
did
did, I
that
kept the
much.
copy, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't
Same.
even ask him this year, I got out the one last
The
year.
copy.
Yeah,
That's
nothing
Because it was
changed.
identical,
Yep,
yeah.
same.
Okay, items for next time.
I need to remind everybody I won't be here for the next 2 meetings, so I apologize. Tomorrow we'll have to stand in for
The
something.
2 of April, the committee.
Both of them, yeah, I'm gonna be gone 5 weeks.
Okay,
And I'm missing committee of the whole for April.
Ooh,
oh, you
so
are?
it's 2 of us, okay.
Ooh,
I
okay.
emailed you on that one?
Yeah, I have it written
Remember
down,
you
but I
were
forgot.
gone. Yeah.
So, do you know what the status of 3050 is? Because if she's leaving, when are you
What's that?
gone?
I can still look at it if we get it next week.
Okay, that's what I was
We've got
gonna,
it
yeah,
mostly
so,
done. I've got a couple questions to the
Okay.
attorney, but we should be
So,
able to get it to you.
we have to
Friday.
have it before she's gone,
Yeah,
Right.
so,
Okay.
which is when?
I leave on that
Do-
Monday.
Okay.
Do we want
I
to?
think I have it already, we already reviewed.
Yeah.
So I can email it to you
We spent a lot of time on it.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
the
if
other
there's
ones are
any
ready.
change from the.
Yeah, I think we did the other two, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That'd be great.
I'll email it to you.
And then, I think I sent you the 2 personnel ones yesterday, correct? Right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
okay.
Jeff.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. We're working on those.
and Gina, if you want to still email me the minutes from this, I'll have a computer
Okay.
where I'm going, so I
Okay,
can
very
send
good.
it to you, and then I'm not going to,
Okay, thank you.
I don't mind doing
under,
it. I mean,
no,
that's
I'm gonna do it
ridiculous that you
first.
should have to do it on your
No, it's not right.
vacation.
It's just that my days and nights will be different than your days. and nights.
Okay, whatever. I'll just wait to hear from you then.
Australia. Right, that's my son,
Okay,
like your daughter.
is that it?
Yeah.
Public forum?
I'd like to make an announcement. I would like to remind everybody that Tuesday, April 4th, the next board meeting day, is, I believe, Election Day.
Yep.
And I encourage everybody to get out and vote. As we know, we got a lot of good people running this time.
All 4 of us.
A second.
Well, and in addition to the library board, there are a lot
Yes.
of local contested elections, so do your
Yeah.
research and put in those.
Yeah, I've been
The high
asked,
school.
I've
The
asked her
college,
about the
the high
high school,
school.
and I do know
High
about
school.
about CLC, if anyone would like to
Yeah.
reach out, I'll talk to you
Yep.
about it.
You can print your ballot by going to the Lake County website.
And then
Pre-print your
research
ballot,
those
and then you
people.
can do your research based
Yep.
on the ballot.
That's exactly what I did. Mhm.
Okay,
informed.
all done with that? Okay, would anyone like to speak in public forum? No? Okay. All right, any announcements other than what's on here? All right, who would like to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, I'm hanging up.
8:05.
Bye-bye.
Bye, have a good one.
And these are all done.